I want to say something before we start. Just so it's clear where I'm coming from. I don't believe in God, at least not the way religion usually talks about God. And I don't believe the Bible is divine. I don't believe it was written by some supernatural being watching humanity from the sky. But I also don't think it's meaningless. That's the part that's always bothered me. Because something doesn't survive for thousands of years across cultures, languages, and empires just because people were naive. So I'm not here to argue. And I'm not here to mock belief. I'm here because something about these stories refuses to disappear. What pushed me away from religion wasn't the stories themselves. It was the way they were explained. Literal. Fear-based. Believe this or else. I was told what to think before I was ever allowed to understand. And the moment I started asking real questions, questions about logic, psychology, human nature, the conversation stopped. But the stories didn't stop. Adam and Eve, the flood, Abraham, Moses, they kept showing up in art, in language, in the way people talk about guilt, temptation, failure, redemption. So the question that stayed with me wasn't, is this true? It was, why is this still here?
Let me start by saying something important. I'm not here to convince you of anything, not to convert you, not to restore faith, not to ask you to believe. If belief were required for this conversation, I wouldn't be interested in having it. What we're exploring here is not religion. It's not theology. It's a way ancient people described the inner structure of the human being long before modern psychology had language for it. So for now, let's forget God as a figure, forget heaven, forget punishment and reward. Let's talk about the Bible as a map, not a map of the world, a map of experience, of desire, fear, impulse, resistance, growth. These stories weren't written to explain the universe. They were written to explain why humans repeat the same patterns over and over, no matter the century. That's why names matter, places matter, events matter, but not as history, as inner states. Take the Garden of Eden. If we read it literally, we argue about fruit and snakes, but if we read it symbolically, something else appears, a state of harmony, a moment before self-awareness fractures experience, not the first humans, the first inner conflict.
Okay, but this is where I usually stop people. Because this sounds like reinterpretation after the fact. I mean, you could take any old myth and say it represents human psychology. Why call this wisdom? Why call it God? Why not just say these are early stories about the mind before science figured things out?
That's a fair question, and I don't want to answer it too quickly because if I do, it will sound like I'm defending something, and I'm not. Psychology observes behavior, patterns, reactions. This system, what we're calling ancient wisdom, isn't focused on behavior. It's focused on intention, on what happens before thought becomes action, before emotion becomes identity, before choice becomes habit. That difference matters, but we don't need to prove it yet. We just need to look.
So what you're saying is, instead of asking, did this happen? You're asking, what happens inside a person when this story unfolds?
Exactly, and if we do this right, you won't need belief. You'll recognize yourself. And if at any point this feels uncomfortable, that's not a problem. Discomfort usually means we're close to something real. Let's begin at the beginning.
Before we go further, I want to clarify something. When people hear the Bible, they usually think of commandments, rules, morality. They don't think of a map of the inner world. So if someone is listening right now, someone who's skeptical like me, what exactly are they supposed to forget in order to even hear this properly?
They need to forget one assumption, that the Bible is trying to tell you how to behave. It's not. Behavior is the last layer. The Bible is describing what happens before behavior appears, before you choose, before you react, before you justify. It's interested in the mechanics that produce behavior, not the behavior itself.
That already sounds different from how I grew up hearing it. Morality was always front and center. Good versus evil. Right versus wrong.
Because morality is easy to teach. You can write it on a wall, you can enforce it, you can punish people when they break it. Understanding inner processes is harder. It requires observation, patience, honesty. Ancient wisdom wasn't interested in creating obedient people. It was interested in creating aware people. Morality emerges naturally when awareness is present. Without awareness, morality becomes control.
So you're saying most religious arguments are happening at the surface level, while the text itself is operating underneath that?
Yes. And that's why people talk past each other. One side argues belief, the other argues logic. But the text was never written to win either argument. It was written to be used.
Okay, then we need to talk about the word God. Because for me, that word shuts things down immediately. It brings images of authority, judgment, and something external watching me. If we keep using that word, what are we actually talking about?
Good. Let's slow down here, because this is where most conversations fail. In this framework, God is not a being, not a personality, not a watcher. The word points to the force of reality itself, the laws that operate whether you believe in them or not, just like gravity. You don't need faith in gravity. You don't get punished for disbelief. You either understand how it works, or you suffer the consequences naturally.
So God isn't listening to prayers?
Not in the way people imagine. Prayer, in this system, is not asking. It's alignment. It's adjusting intention to match reality's structure. Reality responds to alignment, not words. That's why some people pray their whole lives and nothing changes. And others never pray yet move in harmony with life. Think about something modern, stress. You can believe stress isn't harmful. You can deny it. But if your inner state is constantly resisting reality, your body pays the price. No punishment, no judgment, just consequence. Ancient wisdom called that system God, not because it was religious, but because it was absolute.
That's actually closer to how I already see the world. I've always rejected God because it felt arbitrary, but what you're describing doesn't feel arbitrary. It feels structural.
Exactly, and once you remove arbitrariness, fear disappears. What's left is responsibility.
Then why stories? If this is about structure and law, why not just explain it directly? Why all the drama?
Because theory stays in the intellect. Stories enter the nervous system. You don't think your way through a story, you experience it. That's why you remember stories from childhood but forget explanations from last year. The Bible uses narrative because inner change doesn't happen through information. It happens through recognition. So instead of jumping around, let's do this properly. Let's take one story, not to prove anything, but to see whether this lens holds. If it doesn't, you can discard it completely.
Which story?
The first one, not because it's religious, but because it introduces every conflict that follows the moment humans become aware of themselves. Forget the garden as a place, forget the fruit, forget the snake. We're not starting with sin, we're starting with consciousness, splitting in two.
Two?
Yes, desire and awareness of desire, that's where everything begins. Before there's a story, there's a state, not a place, a condition. The garden represents a human experience where desire and awareness are unified. So nothing is questioned because nothing is separate. There's no inner voice saying, I want this, but I shouldn't. There's no shame, no self-observation, just being.
So not innocence in a moral sense, more like no inner friction?
Exactly, not purity, simplicity.
Then the tree, because that's always the focal point. Why that?
The tree represents differentiation, branches, choices, paths. Before the tree, experience is whole. After the tree, experience becomes divided, good and bad, right and wrong, me and reality. The knowledge of good and evil is not moral knowledge, it's dual perception. Eating the fruit is not an act, it's an awakening. The moment a human being becomes aware of themselves as a separate entity, the moment you realize, I am experiencing desire, that realization changes everything.
So self-awareness is the fall.
Not a fall, a transition, necessary but costly.
And the snake? Because this is where it usually goes supernatural.
The snake is not evil, it represents instinctual intelligence, the voice of desire itself, not temptation, movement. Evolution doesn't begin with logic, it begins with appetite. The snake doesn't lie, it speaks half-truth. you will see differently. And that part is true. The moment awareness separates from desire, shame appears. They saw they were naked. That's not about bodies, it's about exposure. For the first time, a human sees themselves from the outside, judges themselves, divides.
That actually tracks with psychology. Self-consciousness, the observing self.
Yes. And once the observer appears, innocence is gone. Not because something went wrong, but because something complex began.
So expulsion isn't punishment?
No. You can't return to unawareness once awareness exists. The angel with the flaming sword is irreversibility. You can't unknow what you know, there's no going back. Only forward. Think about childhood. There's a moment, different for everyone, when you realize, I'm being seen. After that moment, life is never the same. You start managing yourself, editing, performing. That's exile, not spiritual, psychological.
And painful.
Yes, but also the beginning of growth.
So this is the foundation. Everything else builds on this split.
Every story that follows is about repairing the relationship between desire and awareness. Cain and Abel, the flood, Abraham. Different expressions of the same fracture.
Then where is God in the story? If no one is punishing anyone,
God is the structure that responds to inner states. When the inner world fragments, reality reflects fragmentation. Work becomes labor, relationships become conflict, life becomes effort. Not because God is angry, because alignment is lost. Awareness gives freedom. But freedom requires responsibility. Without responsibility, awareness becomes anxiety. That's why the story doesn't romanticize awakening. It shows the cost.
That's not how I've ever heard the story told.
Because most interpretations skip the inner dimension, and without it, the story becomes absurd.
So the Bible starts by saying, being human means living with a split inside yourself.
Yes. And every meaningful life is an attempt to reunite what was divided. This isn't about belief, it's about recognition. If you've ever felt torn between what you want and what you know, you've lived this story.
I don't believe in God, but I recognize myself in this. There's something that stayed with me after our last conversation. You said awareness splits desire, and that everything that follows is an attempt to repair that split. So when the next story appears, Cain and Abel, what exactly are we looking at now? Because this is where the Bible turns violent.
It turns honest. Adam and Eve describe the split itself. Cain and Abel describe what happens after the split when it's not understood. Notice something subtle. They're brothers, not enemies, not strangers. They come from the same source. That's important. Cain and Abel are not two people. They are two forces inside the same human being.
So what are they?
They are two ways of relating to desire. Abel represents desire that flows naturally, instinctive, present. Cain represents desire that tries to own reality, to control it, to prove itself.
Then the offerings. Because that's where the story usually breaks down. Why does one get accepted and the other rejected?
The offerings are not gifts to God, they are inner orientations. Abel offers what is, Cain offers what he produces. One is aligned with reality, the other tries to negotiate with it. God doesn't punish Cain, he doesn't even reject him. He reflects Cain's inner state back to him. Your offering doesn't align. That's not judgment, that's information.
But Cain experiences it as rejection.
Because ego experiences misalignment as personal failure. This is the most important line in the story. Sin crouches at the door. It doesn't say sin controls you. It says it waits. You still have choice. Cain isn't doomed. He's warned.
And he ignores it.
Because wounded pride doesn't listen.
So Cain kills Abel. If these are inner forces, what does that actually mean?
It means control destroys innocence. When the part of you that wants to dominate reality silences the part of you that simply is, something essential dies. Not physically, existentially. After the murder, Cain is lost, disconnected, restless. He becomes a wanderer. That's not a curse, that's psychology. When inner harmony is broken, there's no rest.
That explains a lot of modern life.
Yes, ambition without alignment creates movement without peace.
That line always felt sarcastic to me.
It is avoidance. Cain refuses responsibility for what he destroyed inside himself. That's the beginning of denial, and denial is the seed of repetition.
Then comes the mark. Protection. Why protect him?
Because destruction doesn't heal destruction. The mark says you cannot fix inner imbalance by eliminating parts of yourself. They must be integrated. Think about burnout. People silence their natural rhythms to chase productivity. They kill Abel. Then they wonder why they feel empty, restless, disconnected. That's Cain wandering.
And the system doesn't punish them. It just reflects it.
Exactly.
So Adam and Eve introduce awareness. Cain and Abel show what happens when awareness becomes control.
Yes, and the Bible isn't condemning this, it's mapping it, so that later stories can show repair. Every person has a Cain and an Abel. Growth doesn't mean killing either, it means learning who should lead and when.
That's unsettling, but also strangely relieving.
Because it removes moral shame and replaces it with responsibility.
So where does this go next? Because clearly this doesn't end with Cain.
No. The next question is, what happens when inner chaos becomes collective? When confusion multiplies? That's when the flood appears.
You said the flood appears when inner chaos becomes collective. That already sounds familiar. But why a flood? Why water?
Because water represents emotion, not feelings in a poetic sense, raw, unstructured inner movement. Thought has form. Emotion doesn't. When emotion loses containment, it floods. The text says the world became violent, but violence isn't only physical, it's internal. When thoughts, desires, fears, and impulses move without hierarchy, they collide. That collision is violence.
So the flood isn't punishment, it's collapse.
Yes, exactly, a system overwhelmed by itself.
Then Noah, one man spared. Why him?
Because Noah represents a single, stabilizing point inside chaos, not perfection. Consistency, the ability to observe without drowning.
Let me guess, the ark isn't a boat.
It's a container, a structure built inside the psyche that can hold emotion without being consumed by it. The ark is discipline, not restriction, framework. The text emphasizes the time, years, decades. That's intentional. Stability doesn't appear instantly. Containment is built slowly through repeated alignment.
That already contradicts most modern self-help.
Because self-help sells relief. This maps transformation.
And the animals? Because that part always felt absurd.
Animals represent instinctual drives, aggression, sexuality, fear, nurturing. They are not eliminated, they are preserved. Two of each, balance.
So Noah doesn't suppress instinct, he houses it.
Exactly. Suppression creates pressure, containment creates order. 40 is not a number, it's a process. A full cycle of destabilization, enough time for illusion to dissolve, not enough time to destroy potential.
That sounds like depression.
It often feels like it. When the inner world floods, you lose reference points. Old identities dissolve. That's frightening, but sometimes necessary.
Why does everything have to go? Why not just fix what's broken?
Because chaos isn't localized. When inner order collapses, every structure built on it becomes unreliable. You don't renovate a flooded foundation, you wait, notice something else. During the flood, Noah does nothing. No steering, no fixing, just staying afloat.
That's uncomfortable.
Yes, because modern culture worships action. But in overwhelm, action often worsens damage.
Then the dove, why a bird?
The dove represents intuition, not instinct, not logic. The subtle sensing of readiness. It doesn't return with land, it returns with a leaf, a signal, not a solution. When the waters recede, the world is not restored. It's changed, simpler, quieter, less ambitious, no illusions of control.
That's rarely how people talk about new beginnings.
Because new beginnings are fragile, they don't announce themselves loudly.
And the rainbow? Because that always felt sentimental.
It's a reminder, not a promise of protection, a reminder of limitation. Reality will not flood endlessly, but chaos will return if structure dissolves again. Burnout, breakdown, nervous system collapse. These are modern floods. The arc is routine, boundaries, rhythm, not escape.
So people don't need saving, they need containment.
Yes, salvation is stability.
This feels uncomfortably current.
Because collective emotion is rising again, information without hierarchy, reaction without reflection. The flood always returns when awareness loses structure.
So the Bible isn't warning about apocalypse. It's warning about overwhelm.
Yes, and offering a way through it that doesn't deny emotion, but survives it.
So after the flood, what comes next?
Humanity tries to skip integration, to build upward without inner repair. That's when the tower appears.
So after the flood, there's order again. Stability, boundaries. So why does everything fall apart again so quickly?
Because stability alone isn't integration. The flood reset chaos. It didn't resolve intention. Humanity learned how to survive, but not how to relate. The text says everyone spoke one language. That doesn't mean vocabulary. It means one inner orientation. One shared desire, but not alignment, uniformity.
Uniformity sounds efficient.
Yes, it is, and that's the danger.
Why a tower? Why not a city?
Because upward movement symbolizes transcendence, but not inner transcendence, external elevation. Instead of refining the inner world, humanity tries to rise above it, to escape limitation. This is the core line. Let us make a name for ourselves. Identity becomes the goal. Not alignment, not responsibility, recognition.
That feels very modern.
It is modern, but it's not new. At this stage, ego is no longer individual, it's collective. Everyone reinforces the same illusion. Progress without reflection, growth without depth, that's when collapse becomes inevitable.
So the problem isn't ambition.
No, it's ambition without self-knowledge.
Then the punishment. Languages are confused. Why that?
Because when inner intention fragments, communication follows. People stop understanding each other, not because words change, but because meaning does. Everyone speaks from a different center. This isn't destruction, it's interruption. If the tower continued, humanity would harden into illusion. Confusion stops momentum, forces reflection.
So confusion is protective.
Look at modern culture. Endless connection, endless content, yet no shared meaning. Everyone speaks. No one listens. That's Babel.
And the higher we build, the less grounded we become.
Exactly.
So after Babel, humanity is scattered, confused, disconnected. What's the response?
Now comes something new. Not a system, not a structure, a person. For the first time, the text focuses on an individual who chooses alignment without consensus. Not a hero, not a ruler. Someone willing to walk without certainty.
That sounds lonely.
It is, and that's why it works.
Every story so far has been about systems failing. Families, humanity, societies. So why Abraham?
Because repair doesn't begin collectively, it begins individually. Abraham represents a new possibility, alignment without certainty. The call isn't geographic, it's internal. Leave your assumptions, your inherited identity, your automatic patterns, not to become someone else, but to become aligned.
So faith isn't belief.
Faith is movement without guarantee.
Why doesn't Abraham get proof? Miracles? Certainty?
Because proof removes responsibility. Abraham must choose alignment without reward. That's what makes him foundational. Notice something else. Abraham's life isn't easy. Alignment doesn't mean comfort. It means coherence.
That's not a popular message.
Truth rarely is. Think of someone who leaves a life that looks successful because it feels false. No applause, no validation. That's Abraham.
So Abraham isn't the father of religion.
He's the father of responsibility.
So where does this path lead? Because alignment sounds demanding.
It is. Next, we encounter relationship, conflict, attachment, the hardest work of all.
After Abraham, it feels like something shifts. Less philosophy, more tension. Why does the story suddenly narrow into family drama?
Because once alignment appears, attachment follows immediately. Not as a mistake, as a test. Alignment is fragile. Attachment reveals whether it's real. Isaac and Ishmael are not rivals, they are possibilities. Two ways desire relates to time. Ishmael represents urgency, now, immediate fulfillment. Isaac represents patience, delay, alignment before outcome.
So this isn't about favoritism.
No, it's about timing.
Then why does Ishmael come first?
Because urgency always comes first. When alignment feels uncertain, the impulse to force outcome appears. That's Ishmael. Not wrong, premature.
Then he's sent away. That's hard to hear.
It's not rejection, it's differentiation. Alignment cannot coexist with attachment that demands immediacy. Ishmael isn't destroyed, he's released. Notice something important. The text says Ishmael is heard, meaning urgent desire is not evil. It is acknowledged, but it cannot lead.
That reframes a lot.
That's the pattern. Nothing is erased. Everything is integrated. Think of people who rush outcomes, careers, relationships, healing. They don't fail because they want too much. They fail because they don't wait.
So maturity isn't suppression.
It's sequencing.
So after urgency is released, what comes next?
Now comes conflict, not between generations. Inside one person, the text says they struggle before they are born. That's intentional. This conflict predates choice.
So this isn't learned behavior.
No, it's structural. Esau is embodiment, instinct, physicality, immediate response. He lives in the world without reflection.
That doesn't sound evil.
It isn't, but it cannot lead consciousness. Jacob represents strategy, thought, calculation, future orientation. He observes desire instead of being driven by it.
So the tension is inevitable.
Yes, and necessary.
Then comes the exchange. A birthright for food. That always felt absurd.
Because it's not about value, it's about hierarchy. When instinct is hungry, it sacrifices future orientation. Jacob doesn't steal, Esau trades. The blessing represents authority, who leads the inner system. Instinct believes strength should rule. Consciousness knows direction matters more than power.
And deception?
Deception is immaturity. Jacob knows what should lead, but doesn't yet know how to integrate. Jacob must flee, not because he's wrong, but because premature dominance creates imbalance. Integration cannot be rushed.
So even correct orientation can be destructive if mistimed.
Exactly. Every human life contains this struggle. Instinct says now, consciousness says later. Growth is not choosing one, it's teaching them to cooperate.
And when they don't?
The struggle continues until it's faced directly.
Jacob is about to face Esau again. After everything, the deception, the escape, the years. Why now?
Because avoidance has limits. You can delay integration, but you can't bypass it. This night represents the moment running no longer works. Jacob sends everyone away. Family, belongings, protection. What remains is identity, no roles, no strategies, just the self-meeting itself.
That's unsettling.
But it is necessary.
So the angel, who or what is it?
It's resistance, the inner force that preserves old identity. Not evil, protective. It exists to prevent premature transformation. They don't speak, they wrestle. Because identity is not resolved intellectually, it's resolved somatically, through effort, tension, endurance.
So insight isn't enough.
Never. Jacob is injured, that's essential. Transformation costs something. Old strength cannot carry new identity.
So the wound isn't failure.
It's proof the struggle was real. Jacob becomes Israel, not a reward, a redefinition, one who struggles and does not escape.
So identity comes after confrontation.
Always. Only after this can Jacob face Esau, not as strategy, as integration.
So Esau was never the enemy.
No, he was unfinished integration.
So after identity stabilizes, why does the story drop into betrayal?
Because clarity doesn't eliminate ego. It exposes it. Joseph represents unrefined potential. Joseph sees truth, but too early. Vision without humility creates separation.
So truth can still harm.
If it serves identity instead of alignment, yes. Joseph is thrown into a pit, that's descent. When ego collapses, awareness falls into silence.
That sounds like depression again.
Yes, Joseph becomes a servant, not because he failed, but because ego must learn service. Until then, power corrupts vision.
Then he's punished for something he didn't do. Why?
Because refinement isn't fair, it's precise. Integrity must exist without validation. Prison is containment, like the ark. A place where ego dissolves and perception sharpens.
So suffering isn't the goal.
Clarity is, Joseph now interprets dreams without centering himself. The same ability, new orientation.
So the gift didn't change.
Only the intention. Joseph rises, but he no longer needs recognition. Power serves structure, not self.
That's rare.
That's why it's written. You see, when Joseph meets his brothers again, he doesn't punish, he integrates, because ego refined becomes provision for others.
So the descent was preparation.
Yes, always.
Everything up to now feels like preparation. Awareness, conflict, overwhelm, identity, refinement. So Moses isn't another character, he's a threshold.
Yes, Moses is not about becoming someone, he's about leaving something. Inner slavery doesn't end with insight, it ends with courage. Moses is born into slavery, not oppression from outside, habit from inside, automatic patterns, fear-driven repetition, comfortable suffering. Slavery is not pain, it's familiarity.
That's unsettlingly accurate.
Because freedom threatens identity.
So Pharaoh isn't a villain.
He's a function, the part of the psyche that benefits from stagnation. He doesn't hate change, he fears collapse of control. Moses grows up inside the system. He knows power, language, structure. Liberation cannot come from ignorance. It must understand what it confronts.
So awareness must know the system.
Yes, or it will be swallowed by it.
Then Moses kills someone. That always troubled me.
It's impulsive awakening, seeing injustice before having the tools to transform it. Righteous anger without clarity creates chaos. Moses flees, not because he's weak, because he's early. The desert represents ego stripping, silence, unlearning.
That sounds like exile again.
It is, but chosen this time.
So the bush. This is where most people stop listening.
Then listen carefully. The bush burns but is not consumed. That's awareness that does not destroy instinct. Energy without ego. Presence without domination. I am is not a name. It's a state. Reality as process. No image. No identity. Just presence, responding to alignment.
That's strangely non-religious.
Because religion came later.
Then why does Moses resist the call?
Because he understands the cost. Liberation means conflict, not just with Pharaoh, with the people who prefer slavery. You see, the plagues are not punishments, they are consequences. Each one exposes a false stability. Water turns bitter, abundance collapses, order dissolves, systems fail when alignment is ignored.
So suffering reveals structure.
Yes, not because it's moral, but because it's instructive.
Why does Pharaoh harden?
Because ego doubles down when threatened. Control tightens before it breaks. Leaving Egypt is not triumph, it's disorientation. Freedom removes certainty. The familiar disappears. Anxiety rises.
So liberation feels worse at first.
Yes, almost always.
Then the sea opens. That's where symbolism matters most.
The sea is the unconscious. You don't conquer it. You pass through it when fear no longer leads. Pharaoh dies in the sea, meaning control cannot survive in uncertainty. It dissolves when it follows fear too far.
Wow, that's poetic and precise.
Freedom doesn't end slavery. It exposes it. Complaints begin. Longing for certainty returns. Inner slavery leaves slowly.
Well, that explains relapse.
Exactly.
Then the law rules again.
Structure, not punishment. Freedom without structure collapses. Law stabilizes freedom until responsibility matures.
And Moses doesn't enter the land. Why?
Because liberation isn't ownership. He opens the path. Others must walk it. This map doesn't promise comfort. It promises clarity. If you recognize yourself anywhere, you're already walking.
I don't believe in God, but I can't say this isn't real. I've been sitting with this. Not the stories themselves, but the pattern underneath them. And something keeps bothering me. If this was never about belief, then why does it feel uncomfortable?
Because belief is passive, recognition is not. Belief asks nothing of you. You agree, you disagree, you move on. Recognition interrupts. It doesn't argue, it reflects. And reflection threatens identity.
So the discomfort isn't resistance, it's exposure.
Yes.
That's ironic, because people think religion is demanding, but this feels heavier.
Religion can be outsourced. Rules, rituals, authority. This cannot. No one does the work for you. Most people stop at insight. They say, that makes sense. Then they return to habit. Insight without application becomes entertainment.
So understanding can be avoidance.
Yes, a refined one.
So what is being asked? Not morally, practically.
To observe yourself without editing, to notice where you resist reality instead of responding to it, to stop blaming the world for inner misalignment. That's all.
That sounds simple, but it doesn't feel easy.
Because identity is built around justification. If you remove justification, something collapses. That collapse feels like loss. Notice what this map never does. It never labels you good or bad. It never gives you a villain. Even Pharaoh wasn't evil, just misaligned.
That removes excuses.
Yes, and drama. People argue about God because arguing avoids responsibility. They debate existence instead of alignment. That's safer.
So atheism and religion can both be escape.
If used defensively, yes. Let me ask something gently, not philosophically, personally. Where in your life are you asking reality to adjust to you instead of adjusting to reality?
That question lands.
You don't need to answer it. Just notice where it stings. That's usually the place where growth is waiting.
So this channel, this whole thing, it's not about ancient stories.
No. It's about what exists before reaction, before narrative, before defense. The moment where choice is still possible. If nothing here convinced you, good. If something here unsettled you, stay with that. That's where clarity begins.
I still don't believe in God.
Well, you don't need to. Just don't lie to yourself.